You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold. Today we welcome in a very special guest, and we're so grateful to have her join us. Nancy Grace is an American legal commentator and television journalist. Nancy is a former prosecutor in Atlanta and a tireless advocate for victims' rights. Nancy is the author of Don't Be a Victim, Fight Back Against America's Crime Wave, and host of the podcast Crime Stories with Nancy Grace. Thank you so much for being here. It's such an honor to speak with you.
Oh my goodness, the honor's all mine. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I'm sitting here having some coffee, and I never thought, 5 years ago I'd be speaking with you on the other end. So this is quite a thrill. So thanks so much, Nancy. So here on Lawyer Stories, we discuss backgrounds of why people went to law school and like what they're doing now. So can you just start by giving us a background, like where were you born and raised? Where are you from?
Well, I was born in a very rural area south of Macon, Georgia, which is the geographic center of Georgia. Nowhere near a city. It took us about 20 to 25 minutes to even get to a McDonald's. So wow. I literally grew up on a red dirt road.
Okay.
And I didn't really know what was at the end of beyond that road.
Okay, wow. So a lot to come from there. Probably like looking back, how you've done so much. It's amazing. So tell us about going off to college and being a fan of Shakespeare and thinking you wanted to be an English professor, and then there was a turn in your life.
Yes, I went away to school and loved the academic setting. I truly was devoted to my Shakespearean literature studies and decided to become a university professor. That was my hope, of Shakespearean literature. I had met my fiance Keith Griffin at school. He was there on baseball scholarship. We fell in love, got engaged, but shortly before our wedding, he was murdered. There have been many, many reports regarding his death, but what happened is he had transferred from where we originally met to UGA because where he was at for his baseball scholarship did not have the last few classes he needed for a geology degree. I, at the same time, in order to be close to him, transferred to my home, Macon, and went to Mercer University. That summer, he had a job on a construction crew. His father, Keith's father's friend, owned a construction company, and Keith picked up that job for the summer. One day at lunchtime, Keith volunteered to go get the other guys sodas. He left the site, was out really in the middle of nowhere, came back to the site, and unbeknownst to him, a guy was waiting there when he re-entered the site. The guy had been fired from the crew the week before Keith started, and I guess he was angry about the firing. He sees Keith returning in the company truck and just started shooting. And he shot Keith 5 times in the face, the neck, the back. And he was murdered. I was in summer school at the time, taking summer classes at Mercer, and had just come out of a statistics exam and was walking to my job. I worked in the university library, and I stopped about halfway at a payphone at the student union to call Miriam, Miss Hudgens, to let her know that I was late coming out of the exam. And she told me to call Keith's family. I knew immediately that Keith was dead.
Wow.
And I dropped out of school, and it just started a long saga of trying to live through that. At the time, I wasn't really considering how I was going to make a comeback. I just was living moment to moment.
Yeah, wow. So that really, I mean, obviously changed the course of your life.
It did.
In terms of going to law school. And then, so like, how long after, I mean, were you grieving? And then how long after did you say, I'm going to go, I need to go to law
It took
school
me a
and become
while.
prosecutor?
I mean, I dropped out of school.
Right.
And I went to live with my sister, who was a professor at the Wharton School in Philadelphia at that time. And it was while I was living with her that I had the idea to return and finish school and go to law school.
Wow. So, and you really you went with a purpose, right? I mean, you had just been through this whole thing and this tragedy, and you went to law school with a purpose. And I mean, you've sort of been, I feel like, maybe living your life through these crimes and being such a zealous advocate for victims as a result of, what happened these years ago. I mean, is that sort of accurate?
No, I would not say in any sense that I have been living my life through crime victims. I've been living my life trying to get justice for crime victims and their families. And it has certainly been a battle.
Yeah, I worded that question wrong. I apologize.
It's okay.
So do you feel like, so what was your law school experience like?
Well, my law school experience was probably unlike a lot of people's because I had no interest at all in attending parties or being part of fraternities or groups or clubs. I worked all the way through law school also, took out loans to get through. So there were times that I worked at a sandwich shop. I got fired from that. It was my first and only firing because I needed to take the week of exams off, and the boss didn't want me to, so he fired me. That was just as well. I don't think I had a very good career there. Yeah, but I can always say I have mopped floors and cleaned bathrooms whenever the children whine. My children whine. That's true, I worked there. I worked at different law firms in various capacities as, a law clerk. I worked at a real estate company as a receptionist. I don't even know what all I did going through law school. Wow. But I did get through, and I somehow managed to get onto Law Review and publish, and that was, a high point, making Law Review. After that, I had a clerkship with a federal judge. Then I went to the Antitrust and Consumer Protection arms of the Federal Trade Commission with the feds. And all the while, I would repeatedly bombard various district attorney's offices to get on with them, across the country, Philly, just different places. And I ended up ultimately getting hired in Atlanta. And that was my dream. And of course, there's never a lack of business there.
Right. No, that's amazing. Do you think, how do you think having a personal experience, with the legal system, dealing with the legal system early on, helps someone become a better attorney or advocate? For instance, if someone was an immigrant to the country and then they became an immigration attorney, do you think having those personal experiences, helps somebody become a better advocate for their clients?
That's a really good question. My knee-jerk reaction would be yes. However, I've seen so many people that are advocates that for instance, crime victims advocates that have not been a criminal. I mean, have not been a victim themselves.
Sure.
Or that really applies to all areas of the law. But, gosh, I think that when you have lived through certain experiences, it definitely gives you a different edge and purpose to what you are doing. Like, there are a lot of great prosecutors that have not been crime victims. There's a lot of great defense attorneys that have not, been charged with a crime or had a family member or friend charged with a crime. So that's a really good question, and I'm torn on that.
Thanks. Yeah. I think of like family law lawyers, and I know criminal defense attorneys probably doesn't work as well. So tell us about, like, you had a nice career in Atlanta, I guess for like 10 years as a prosecutor. Tell us about the transition from prosecutor to broadcasting and legal analyst.
I don't know that I would call my career in Atlanta nice, because it was more like hand-to-hand mutual combat every day of my life with a horde of defense attorneys, some very, very good lawyers who I'd have to match wits with in court, some that were horrible lawyers, which were even worse to handle because you had to not only try to get the conviction, but you had to watch out for the defendant so the lawyer would not be deemed ineffective on appeal, and they'd have to try the whole thing all over again. It's like,
Wow.
So I don't know which was more difficult.
I'm just curious, like, what does a horrible lawyer look like to you?
Someone that was unprepared, someone unprepared, someone that doesn't know the law. And of course, we're not, human research books. We're not walking statutes. So everyone isn't born with an innate knowledge of the law. It requires research and work, or having a great assistant, but which I did not. I had to do my own research on the weekends in a law library, but I always got a great feeling on weekends when I would be at work. There'd be nobody else in the office, nobody else in the law library. And I remember looking out the windows of the law library at the Fulton County Courthouse. I'd be in there all alone, looking out those floor-to-ceiling glass windows they had, thinking that the defense attorney was out there somewhere, kicked back, having a beer, watching football, and I was going to kick his booty come Monday morning. That's a great feeling. It really is.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't call it nice, but I would call it the best, the hardest job I ever loved. It was by far that, and volunteering at the Battered Women's Center at night were two of my crowning achievements. How did I get into broadcasting? That was a complete fluke. I was invited to sit on a so-called panel of experts in New York at the Great Hall of Justice, and I coincidentally sat between Johnny Cochran right after Simpson and Roy Black right after the William Kennedy Smith debacle. And, I didn't know any of those people. They didn't mean anything to me. I didn't care what kind of a fight I got into, so we got into a huge fight. And I really tore them new buttholes, and I was pretty happy with that. And I was leaving, and because I had a trial calendar on the following Monday morning. As I recall, it was a rape case, and I had already felt guilty that I had left town and had been gone was going to be gone overnight or whatever it was, and I knew I should be working on the trial. And they said, "Would you consider a he say, she say, Cochran and Grace for court TV?" I'm like, no way. I'm a trial lawyer. Goodbye. But thank you. I'm flattered. I left. Well, as fate would have it, my elected district attorney, Mr. Slayton, the longest serving DA in U.S. history at that time, I think it was 37 years he was elected, and for good reason, suddenly announced he was retiring. I had never broken down and cried at all, all the years I had been a lawyer. And I actually cried. I said, "Mr. Slayton, don't do this. Please don't do this. Because what am I going to do? Forget about you. What am I mean?" And he wanted to retire to be with his wife, and he did. And I thought, what am I going to do now? What, become a defense attorney? That's not happening. Well, I thought, hey, I called Court TV back. I said, that job, I'll take it. And I moved to New York with 2 Schifferow boxes of clothes, a curling iron, and $300 in my savings account. And I'm not a big spender, but that's all I had after all those years, because, public servants don't get paid very much. And that was with working two night jobs as a teacher.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
And so that's how it all happened.
What is your definition of justice?
My definition of justice would be, and I don't really know a fancy way to put this, the right thing.
That's good.
The right thing. There is no black and white letter of the law to me that really defines justice. I know there are mandatory minimums and sentencing guidelines, and I'm fine with that. I don't know that that always is justice, because there's so many ways to manipulate that, and I've seen that happen many times. And I guess justice is in the eye of the beholder. Each person sees it a different way. And really, is there ever justice? Is there justice? Even when there's been a trial and a conviction and a sentence. I guess I'm kind of equating justice to mending a broken heart, and that's really impossible.
Interesting. Yeah, that's so true. So, Nancy, how can someone become an advocate for victims' rights?
Oh my goodness, that's so easy to do. But I don't advise it for the weak of heart, and I don't advise it for anyone that doesn't really feel it. I remember in law school, people would say, I don't know, either you're born a trial lawyer or you're not. It's not anything you can learn. And at the time, I'm like, oh, dear Lord in heaven, what if I don't have it? What if I can't do it? And I agree and I disagree with that statement, because you can technically become a great lawyer, a great trial lawyer. Some people just happen to have a certain spark in the courtroom, like Johnny Cochran. I disagree with everything the man ever said, God rest his soul, but he was a great, great trial lawyer, and actually learned a lot from him. So as far as being a victim's advocate, it's got to be something you believe in and you feel, and that you're willing to sacrifice for it. Hours, emotions, tears, heartache, frustration, no pay.
Yeah.
And if you're okay with that, then you're perfect.
Yeah, okay. I love that. So do you want to tell us a little bit about your crimeonline.com website?
Yes, I'll do that right now.
And the purpose of that?
Okay, let me tell you, I loved my years at Court TV. I loved my time at CNN's HLN. There was a time that the children, I'd been going live every night for years and years and years and years, between Larry King, who was, a great person. He really helped me. And as a matter of fact, one of his staff became my executive producer, and we started the Nancy Grace Show together, Dean Sicoli, who is, to this day, my best friend. Long story short, it got to a point with the children that they would cry and cry and cry when I would leave to go live. So CNN wanted me to do a live show again instead of taping in the afternoon. And anyway, the whole thing blew up. When I left HLN, I didn't know what I was going to do. And I had a website creator for during Dancing with the Stars, just really so people could vote more easily. Mm-hmm. And I called him and I said, look, I'm leaving HLN. Any ideas? And he became my partner, Chris Balfe. We launched crimeonline.com. Then, as an aside, we thought, hey, let's do a little podcast, just kind of like a bonus for people that visit our website. And we started a podcast, and the next thing you knew, Sirius XM got it for an hour. Then they got it for 2 hours. And then Fox Nation entered, and they picked up our program. And it's just been really something to connect with victims and victims' families, investigators, reporters, on so many cases that need a light shined upon them. And it's really a blessing to me. I have an incredible staff, Jackie and Sydney here in the studio, Ely, a studio that I love that Fox built for me, and an incredible staff and partner that has really seen it through. And I'm just so blessed, and I hope to use this opportunity to help other people.
It's amazing. And shout out to Jackie. She is incredible. She very responsive, and I appreciate her a lot.
Please don't say that, because I might start feeling bad about yelling at her all throughout. But I really want to thank you again for inviting me. It's just
thank you.
And I
so
typically do not enjoy at all speaking about my entry into the legal world, but I guess if it can help another person see that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. And I'll be honest, there's no such thing as closure. It never goes away. And it's always right there.
Yeah,
but I always say it's like breaking your arm and never getting it set, but you learn to flip a pancake anyway. You do, if you can just persevere, you can go on and do so much good in the world, or at least try to. And that would be my message. It does not go away. But you do get to a point where you do not cry every day, and you learn to see the blessings around you. There's a long time I couldn't see that.
That's amazing.
And thank you for inviting me. I'm off to my next case.
Okay,
and thank you so much, Benny Gold.
All right, thank you. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
You too.
Stay in touch with me.
Bye, dear.
Take care. Bye.